future possible uses, starting with passive recreation, adding in a little more active recreation, such as boating or mountain biking, things that would have a motor, and also talking about the uses of adjoining properties and how they might affect the site and what uses could be shared by the adjoining properties and the reservoir.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll once we see if we've got everybody, I'm the original filer of the order, and I'll give everybody an overview of exactly why I filed the order. And, you know, at that point, we can move on. Hopefully you people can elect a chair. You'll know what the scope of the order was, and you can move on independently from there, would be my hope. So.
I'm going to share the link of the order as it appears on Municode. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to see it. I'm sorry, not the order, the ordinance. So it has passed. It is the law.
What is passed, Marcos?
The order is when you as a legislator file an order. That's the bill.
Yep.
So it's an ordinance. It is the local law.
Well, I don't think it's an ordinance, is it?
It's on Municode, so it's it's
okay.
an ordinance now. Yeah, you all must have voted on it. March 19th, 2019, adopted.
All right. Maybe we could have you read that word for word once we get started. That'll be better than my overview from memory.
So the link works for me. Let me know if it doesn't work for you all. It's in the chat box.
I was able to use it.
I was able to also. Thank you, Marcos.
No problem.
I was too, but now I can't see anybody.
Yeah, I had the same issue, and there's another window open behind the. So that link opened up a whole new window. I think if you just, I'm no expert at Zoom, but that's what I was able to do.
If you just hit if you're on a PC, you can hit Alt Tab and it'll take you back to the other window. You just toggle.
My granddaughter said the same thing happened to me. I'm glad she's here, or I'd be dead by now. Not being able to figure it out. Hi, Kip.
Hi, Harry. How are you?
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to be seen. And seeing you as well. How do we make out with Dave Moore?
I emailed him just to check in on him. I haven't heard back. His computer's probably still updating.
Want me to give him a call? Got his number here somewhere.
Anything good in that cup, Kip?
He's not telling.
Just coffee. It's early still.
Anything good in that cookie? No, I'm just kidding.
Unfortunately, no, well, chocolate chips.
It's hard to beat chocolate chips.
after being outside all day shoveling, and then I snuck up the Berkshires for a couple hours of skiing. I'm beat, so
Good for you.
that's why I'm gobbling cookies and drinking coffee, trying to stay awake.
This is some nice powder. How was the skiing?
I didn't get there until very late, but it was still pretty nice.
Yeah.
I imagine early it must have been beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd say there was maybe a little more than a foot of snow there, but I have some friends that are up in New Hampshire. We have like over 40 inches of snow.
Yeah, Ludlow, Vermont got 40 inches.
Ludlow.
That's what Mount Snow is, right?
I think that's Okemo up there at Ludlow.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Killington.
Mhm. Killington is close to there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okemo is what I think of in Ludlow. And,
That 40 inches, that doesn't even sound nice anymore.
I've seen close to that on a mountain, but it was in the Rockies. I've never seen 40 inches. I can't imagine what that's like.
Dave Moore's computer is still updating. In case you're interested.
You,
The call in. He can call in, right, and participate just by phone without doing Zoom. Right? Can't you do that?
I don't
he
know.
can even Zoom through his phone.
Depends on his phone.
There's not another way to do it.
If he put up chat and got on his phone, he probably could do it.
So Ellen, a heads up for you, your volume is pretty low. It is.
Hey, Kip, did they have those little huts at Berkshire East going today?
I could see like they were framed, but they don't have like a roof over them yet, but you could see that they're close to opening those.
Yep.
Today was the first day that they were open.
My family and Seth me are going up there tomorrow. I have to work.
Somebody has to, Harry.
Yeah,
Harry, somebody has to work.
I guess.
It should be really nice up there tomorrow. I'm sure they'll groom out. There wasn't much open, but
No, they had
room stuff, and it'll be.
I think probably, right? Pretty
What's
low.
that?
So anyway, I'm going to be going there this year. We'll
I
see.
might try and get up there again tomorrow for a little bit too.
Well, if we can't get Dave Moore up and running, how about if we get started? It's 1:15.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
As a matter of parliamentary procedure, I'd like to make a motion to have a chair pro tempore just for today's meeting so that someone can actually run it. And going through the ordinance, because the first member is the Water Commission, the second one listed in the ordinance is the Conservation Director or member of the Conservation Commission. I would propose that Jeff Haran be today's chair so he can run the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you accept, Jeff? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel railroaded. It's all good. Thanks, Marcos.
Someone's got to do it, man.
All right, it's all good. Hey, I think it's all right. So it's nice to see everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. So I would suggest that just since most folks are familiar to me, but I suspect maybe, does everyone know each other? Why don't we just say 3 words, a couple words about ourselves, and then we can go on from there. I'll go ahead and start. I'm Jeff Haran. I'm the representative from the Conservation Commission. In day-to-day, I work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a forest ecologist, but it's nice to be in Holyoke. So, Mike, you're to my right. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, Mike Sullivan, City Councilor. avid outdoorsman, member of the AMC. Been hiking and skiing everywhere from Argentina to Iceland, and really enjoy the outdoors. That's about it.
Hey, Kip, can you go next? Thanks, Mike.
So my name's Kip Foley. I'm a resident of the city of Holyoke. I am a city council appointee, and I'm looking forward to participating in this exploration of the potential uses of the Whiting Reservoir. So I think it's going to be really interesting to give open consideration to all kinds of crazy ideas, and I think it's going to be I think it'll be fun, and I think at the end of the day we're going to have a product that is probably something none of us sitting here right now could anticipate. So including, and I just want to say, I think a primary option and a good one, and what may turn out to be the best option, is to do nothing, because it's a pretty spectacular place just as it sits. So that's my 2 cents. And
All right, thanks for that. Sue Ellen, can you go next?
Conservation Commission for something like 40 years. Longtime citizen of Holyoke. On the college foundation board at this time, along with Council for Human Understanding, and I am the mayor's appointment to the committee.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Harry, can you go next?
So, well, Harry Craven, I'm the owner of Highland Hardware and Bike Shop right here on Hamden Street in Holyoke. Mount Tom, the range, including the reservoir, has been very important to me my whole life, and I wish to see it continue for at this point, my grandkids, and hopefully great grandkids can enjoy it as well. So that's why I'm on this committee, and I'm a city council appointee.
All right, thank you for that. Marlene, and then we'll go to Marcos.
Sure. So, born and raised in Holyoke, you could draw a little 5-mile circle around where I've ever lived. Right around the res, I'm on Southampton Road. Grew up on Northampton Street. So I was the chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Mount Tom Reservation for a number of years. Active runner, hiker, outdoors person, and longtime friend of Sue Ellen and Harry. And my professional life, I do transportation planning, and I am a appointee of the city council, and I'm really pleased to be here.
Thank you, Marlene. Marcos, go ahead. And Jeff, we're not going to let you off either. You're going to have to do the same.
I'm Marcos Marrero. I'm the city's director of planning and economic development, at least for another few days. My last official day is January 22nd, but here we are. I am the appointee of the planning board. I am driven in my position oftentimes by two things, or I should say, that are relevant to this conversation. Of course, economic development and creating value in the city that can be commercialized and creating commercial ventures and jobs. The Whiting Reservoir could represent that in a limited fashion, particularly in partnership with abutting properties, whether they be private or public, to have kind of an ecotourism destination. But also a big passion of mine since grad school, at least. My thesis has been on that, has been climate change and the importance to prepare for a changing climate, the role that water plays in that, right? So like important to have your reservoirs of water, right? But as we're not using it now, we could use it in other ways. I kind of also echo what Kip says. You know, you approach it with a broad lens, and there is some of that going on now, right? The passive recreation that makes it a destination, but looking at how it could also be enhanced. So glad to join you for however many meetings this will be from now until the 22nd. This may be the only one. And then we'll see what the planning board does afterwards.
You may get a special dispensation from the planning board to continue, you know.
We'll have to get a legal opinion on that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So I am the administrative assistant to the city council. Just started in the job a month ago yesterday, actually. And thank you, Marcos. I know Sue Ellen really well. Actually, I was proud to be a recipient of the scholarship that's in her name at HCC and have gotten to know Sue over the years. And I sit on the Council for Human Understanding with her, actually. And I've run many a 5K around Whiting Reservoir, and so would love to see, you know, I'm glad to sit in to see what all of you come up with in regards to that. I didn't grow up in Holyoke, but I've quickly fallen in love with this community.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And I assume you are capturing our important comments once we move into.
Yes,
that.
I am.
Thank you so much for that. And so Mike, I guess I'll turn it over to you and let you talk about the reason you put in this order, and we now have this ordinance that brought us all together.
Yep. So what first brought it to my attention was the fact that we were about to spend $2 million in a city that's financially strapped to do work up there, especially around the spillway area. And there are some other potential problems that everybody should be aware of looming in the future. Maybe at the next meeting, someone from the water department will be here, or we can get Dave Conti to dig into more detail for you. But also the earthen structure is, it's considered, and I forget now if this is by the state or by the feds, as being, potentially dangerous. So it was going to require a lot of work in the future, and a lot of money being spent. And that's what that was my what first got me going on this. Is if we're going to spend that kind of money, we should get a little more use out of it, or whether it's more passive recreation, or we should at least look into it and see what the will of the public is. If the will of the public, and as the committee dives into it, what they find out is that, yes, we are going to spend millions of dollars and it's going to stay exactly the way it is, so be it. I just thought it was important that we get this conversation and have this conversation out in public. No water has been drawn out of that reservoir in, I believe, over 20 years now. And for the foreseeable future, and I'm talking within the next 20 to 50 years, it will probably not be needed to be used as a reservoir either. But one never knows. And talking with some longtime members of the Water Commission, it's best, they feel, just to keep it as is and have it in reserve pretty much in perpetuity. So myself, I see a resource we're going to spend money on and stuff like that. What other things can we do without damaging any future value of it? Are there other possibilities? And, whether it's just as simple as to start allowing fishing, allowing some other canoeing, some passive recreation. Are there other things that could be bought in there that could easily go away should 25 years from now or 50 years from now we have a need for it as a water source that wouldn't endanger that possibility? And those could range as far as reaching out to places like Berkshire East and see if they wanted to have zip lining up there on the property, if there's other uses, cross-country skiing, whatever. Could we reach out to a bottled water company? Would they be willing to put in a state-of-the-art facility that would also be a host for an outdoor educational center as part of their, just, these are the kind of things that there's a million ideas. I think having a good committee dive into these. There's an opportunity, although the window is closing rapidly on it. The former Mount Tom ski area, the boys club is trying to unload it. DCR is interested in buying it. They were trying to rush it through. The council has tabled that. Would that be a good acquisition for the water department, for the city, for the, to include that as part of the watershed, part of the reservoir? One of the interesting things, and probably one of the more controversial things, would be sometimes when you develop a piece of property like this, you have to acquire more than you're giving up. One of the things that I think you may find is that there's 5 acres that may be suitable for development. And if you sold off 5 acres, they become tax revenue producing, and you could pick up 15 acres on the other side for a net gain of 10 acres. So, I'm not suggesting that anybody's made any offers. It's just there's a lot of things out there that need to be explored, I think. A lot of, if you would, doors to look behind, and things to turn over. And also to hear from the public, to hold a public hearing and see what other ideas we might have out there, and what the will of the public is. So that's pretty much it. I think there's a lot of other ideas that'll surface over time as the committee dives into this. And that's all I'd like to see is a thorough examination of the possibilities in the future, since we are going to be spending this kind of money on it going forward. And we have Dave Moore here. So
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I was late.
Hi, Cleo.
Hi there, Sue. How are you?
Good.
You look
Hey,
beautiful.
how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Good to see you. Microsoft decided to upgrade me, 6:15.
Well, you look upgraded, so that's good. So
Well, I'm glad you noticed.
Yeah. So. Okay, so Dave, we've all gone around and introduced ourselves, and again, I think you know most of the folks here. But why don't you go ahead and say a couple words, and if you want to mention why you're interested in the committee's work, that would be good.
Sure. I've been involved at the reservoir for a long time. I walk there still. Sometimes I walk a lot, but mostly is because I was very, very much involved with it, running Mount Tom for almost 30 years. And it was an adjacent property. I used to plow it for Dan O'Connell to walk it. It was just like we thought it was ours. I had keys to the gate so we could plow it. We took good care of it. We were proud to do it. We thought it was our duty. So I've always been close to it, and I'd like to stay that way.
Thank you for that. And the reason I'm going around and suggesting people to do things is because somehow Marcos elected me to be the temporary chair for this.
Oh, I think that's great. Glad to hear it.
So, all right. So Mike, thanks. So Mike just gave us a background on why the committee is here. Marcos, do you mind? Would you just do you want to take us through the scope and purpose? I don't think we have to read anything else. The administration and operation is straightforward, and I think we can see how the committee was structured, based on who we're seeing. So.
Sure. So I'll read from the second portion of the ordinance that's titled Scope and Purpose, and it has 3 parts, A, B, and C to it. So Part A it reads as follows: the Whiting Reservoir Study Committee shall study the needs, possibilities, and resources of the city regarding the most economical and advantageous uses of the Whiting Reservoir and its surrounding area. The committee shall consult with existing municipal boards, including the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and any other entity it deems advantageous to the study. That's part A. Part B reads, as part of its study, the committee shall hold one or more public informational hearings on the needs, possibilities, and resources of the city regarding the Whiting Reservoir area, notice of which shall be posted publicly and published for each of 2 weeks preceding the hearing in a newspaper of general circulation in the city. Part C reads as follows. Study and recommendations should include, but are not limited to, A, recreational activities such as biking, hiking, fishing, equestrian, cross-country skiing, and other similar venues. B, revenue-producing ventures such as zip lining, water bottling, selective development, camping, food service, and other opportunities. C, acquisition of adjacent properties. And D, partnering opportunities with abutters and educational institutions. That's the totality of that section.
Thank you, Marcos. And I think that's enough unless people want to hear more. The rest is pretty straightforward.
And Dave, I included a link to the ordinance in the chat window if you want to
Okay.
read the whole thing.
Thank you.
So does anyone have questions? You know what? I actually hope Mike decides to stay for the full discussion tonight, but that's his choice. So, but while we're all here, does anyone have questions about the charge? That again, maybe Mike can answer those, or we can delve into them ourselves. Or are there things that we feel that are missing here that we feel like should be considered anyway as part of our discussion while we're thinking about charge?
I don't know about the charge, but it would seem to me that it would be wise at this point to set up some sort of a meeting schedule. How often we'll meet, how long we want to wait before we bring this committee to the point where it could hold a public hearing, and what roles we should individually play when it comes to research that will be needed for the committee's work.
I think that is certainly wise. Comments or, yeah.
I'll follow that thread. I think there's going to be two critical things of import for this committee if the deliverable is going to be good, right? And I'm partially basing these two things on my experience with the community advisory group, similar styled committee for the reuse of Mount Tom. That committee was created in 2011, and it had a charge to look at the reuse of that site. So not so dissimilar to this. But what it didn't have was, number one, ownership. And so that limits your access to the site. And it will also access, if you don't have clear understanding of what ownership wants to consider, it could also put a big question mark on anything that's recommended. Obviously, it was privately owned then. The second thing that it didn't have was resources in the form of personnel, in the form of money to kind of advance the work quicker. And so that work stalled for a long time until the Office of Planning and Economic Development got directly involved. And we secure through Energy and Environmental Affairs through the state technical assistance in the order of magnitude of $125,000 to get a consultant and then run the process, write the document, right? These are long hours with professionals looking at things. So the two things that I think will be important, not necessarily in this order, but number one, I think it will be important to have the water department at the table to understand their thought process around the value of having water on reserve for the future, in order to understand a lot of the points that Councilor Sullivan mentioned around the challenges and opportunities with the existing infrastructure, right? How outdated it is, what they're facing, their costs. There's usually 3 or 4 ways of skinning a cat, right? Like, is it something that's phased? Is it something that has to be done now or in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be? So that's one of the two elements that I think will be important. Not that this committee couldn't move forward without them, right? Like clearly there's an ordinance, the committee has to move, that's the local law. So if the water department decided to not be here, I guess the committee would have to figure out a way of proceeding either way. I think maybe more critical will be securing resources, because in my humble opinion, I think a volunteer committee would be hard pressed to produce the type of study that would create the public trust that all angles have been examined in depth, right? Like there are skill sets that we don't have, and there's time that we'll probably won't have either. And even if we could, it would probably take a very long time. Like running a public hearing, particularly the first one, would probably be a task that would be a good early win, getting some initial feedback. But there's a lot of writing, editing, graphic producing that has to be done here, even with publishing meetings and stuff like that, taking meeting minutes. That will be important to I don't know, recruit some of the city offices. Maybe it is OPED again in the model of the community advisory board. Maybe it's a conservation committee. At least that when I'm saying OPED, I'm not advocating for myself because I won't be there. But some of the bare bones on even hunting down technical assistance, right? Mass Development, for example, has a site readiness grant where you can say, I want to study how to redo the site and creating a scope of work. So creating a scope of work could be something that the committee can put together, and having kind of staff. Right now it's Jeff, but Jeff is staff to the city council, not necessarily to this. Maybe he's volunteering for this. I don't know. But the point is, this group could really say, okay, this is the scope. This is what we want to study. This is what we would want to delegate to a consultant. And then maybe someone in city staff that has a relationship, potentially OPED, with Mass Development or some other agency, maybe it's EEA, Energy Environmental Affairs, securing a grant or a grant for technical assistance, which means we don't get the money. So they just pay for the consultant to do the work for us. And then the committee then becomes a board of directors to the work, which is a lot more, it's more seamless that way, right? So we tell the consultant, this is what I want you to look at. And we're running the hearings and we're telling you what we want you to look at. But you have professionals evaluating whether it's finances, market analysis, where are things grounded, right? Like, is this how crazy is this idea? Or how big of a moonshot is it? Versus what are more conservative low-hanging fruits, right? And so that's it. That's what I would suggest would make a really good product, those two things.
So, Jeff, can I ask a couple of questions here?
You can.
Marcos, for this kind of work, would CPA or CDBG monies be something that the committee could apply for?
I'm not entirely sure on CPA. I'm not as versed in it. I mean, I would say, well, we have the chair here, but I don't want to put you I don't want to put you on the spot.
As a council member. Yeah.
I don't know if CPA money can be used for planning purposes per se. There's a cap on what you can use for administrative purposes, and the CPA committee uses that for a staffer. I will say, in my capacity as director of planning economic development, I kind of applied once for kind of a study, although it would have fallen within, I think it would have been historic preservation. This would have been kind of like a study for conservation. Two limitations to that experience, though. One is I actually was not funded, and I'm not bitter about it. I'm just saying actually it wasn't funded, so it's not good precedent to bring to the table here. And second is that if it doesn't end up being a conservation project, have we put the CPA committee in a bind, right? Like if we're not creating new conservation land. CDBG would have to meet one of the quote national objectives, which is the large buckets of goals that HUD has. Usually those are tied to supporting low and moderate income populations. And so at least my knee-jerk reaction is I would find it difficult to map out where this fits into one of the national objectives. It's worth looking into. But I would say low probability. I think we would have better luck either through the site readiness program through mass development, or some of the products that I know less, maybe the conservation commissioners or the conservation agent knows better through the energy environmental affairs.
Okay, just to the CPA and Kip, maybe you can confirm this, but it's not, conservation isn't one of the charges of CPA. It's open space and recreation and open space, which I think
You're right.
fit under.
You're right.
I just don't know. I
My
just
bad.
don't know if we're same deal. I just don't know if it's allowed for a study or if it has to be for something physical,
It's certainly worth looking into.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with what Mike and also Marco said. And the short answer is I don't know whether CPA money can be used to study open space and recreation, which is the category, right? It certainly is, though, a potential source of money for actually doing things. So we should keep that in the pot as we're considering what could happen up there. But I will reach out to the CPA coalition and specifically ask them if that type of study could be funded with CPA dollars. And next time we get together, I should have an answer on whether that's a potential source of revenue or not.
Thank you, Kip. That's helpful. So I will just ask, since Marco's made that was a pretty strong, set of suggestions, and is most everybody feeling like, based on the scope and purpose that we read, that a full study is what we are beginning to embark upon here? So I see Harry nodding. I'm going to just go around. Dave?
Yes, I think you're right. That would be where I'd go.
Marlene?
Yeah, that's where I think makes sense to me.
Sue Ellen?
Yes.
Kip?
Yes, I mean, I think developing a scope of work for that study before I think it's parallel track, also looking for money. Where is there money out there available? We should be, looking at that also. But developing a scope of work, so if we are able to find some money, we can, pay for a productive study would be wise next steps.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Marco's laid out for us a couple, things to consider. One of the things that Jeff sent out in the email was one of the first things we need to do is elect a chair, and since we have some idea now of the scope and purpose of what we're doing, and now Sue Ellen also brought up talking about how often we would meet and things like that. Do we want to move first to consider the election of a chair before we move into those other issues? Is that something we should move on?
If I may, I would elect a chair, set up a schedule of meetings. Obviously, we have to start to define a scope of what we are looking at so that we can evaluate that scope, things that we as a group think are logical for the mountain, rather than, if you will forgive me, stupid and idiotic things to even think about. And once we have developed that scope, I think we'll have an idea of where we might go looking for funding for some sort of consultancy and writing help if we feel we need it at that point. So I wouldn't put the cart before the horse. I'd say, let's get organized, get to work and see where it takes us.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
So I don't disagree with Sue Ellen on that at all. In parallel, because we've done something similar in terms of the Mount Tom power plant, I think there's some information that I could also bring to the table. One is I just put in the chat the link to the Mount Tom power plant reuse, just so that when I talk about like a reuse study, right, which is kind of what we're looking at here, should we be using this in other ways that we're not using it in now, or in what ways we want to continue using it as it is now? So, that mental model, when I talk about it, like you can see it there, you can click on the link and that gives you an idea. And so to make that, we had a scope of work for the consultant. So it must be in our file somewhere. I could circulate that to the committee or send it to Jeffrey, and he could circulate it to everyone.
Great idea.
And that may be just, it references Mount Tom power plant, but a lot of the structure of the scope of work is the same. It's saying we have a site, we want to look at how to reuse it, look at different challenges and opportunities, essentially a lot of more verbiage, but that's what it says. And so we could quickly probably change some stuff and consider it. And even if this committee wanted to hold a hearing first, we could hold a hearing and say, this is what we're thinking of doing. What does the public think? And then take that as the initial feedback, even before securing any money.
And, from a lot of what I do from a professional perspective is planning with respect to transportation, studies, RFPs, hiring, writing. So I'm happy to contribute whatever I can to reviewing other docs and seeing if we can come up with a format or structure that makes sense.
Thank you, Marlene. That's helpful.
Yep.
Other comments?
I always over volunteer. Pay no attention to me.
Yeah, but when she says she'll do something, she's only just a little wonderful.
Thank you, Sue.
I think you have to get to the point you've got to elect a chair.
Yeah, I think that's important.
I think
So-
Jeff's doing a great job, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
Like
easy now.
Great job.
I'll second that
That's
motion.
probably not a good idea. So I have to say, I'm on 3 other committees and 2 boards of directors. So it would be hard. I'm flattered by the suggestion, but I will ask, is there someone that would be interested in taking this on? I do think this is going to be a significant workload. Yeah, Kip, I know, you're chairing a CPA as it is. Is there somebody that would be that this is at the core of importance to them and they would like to take this on? I think that's a fair question, because somebody that is willing to take this on, I think, is important.
Let me just say that I am chairing the CPA committee for 6 more months or so, and I think one chairmanship is enough. I'm happy to look at it after 6 months or a year from now. But I think the most important role of a chair is someone who knows how to run a meeting with an eye towards a clock, like get in and out. So whoever of the other members of this committee gets selected or nominated as a chair, I think that's the most important role of the chair, is running the meeting. And Jeff, you've done a fine job of running this meeting, but I hear you're busy too. So who else has experience chairing meetings that wants to volunteer for this one?
Well, you know, Kip, it's also behind the scenes setting up the agenda for each meeting, and there's, you know, it's a commitment, and
It's
everyone
way
here
more
knows.
work than
A lot of work.
it is a lot of work.
So Marlene, you did say you're up for you over volunteer, but I mean, just respectfully, I mean,
Second that.
This would be, okay, so this would be my first time participating in a Holyoke structure, so I would need assistance, so I'd have to have a side volunteer. Like a
well, we could
co-chair
have,
or a vice chair.
it would probably be wise to have a vice chair. I think that it would be a wise decision, somebody that understands, you know, parliamentary proceedings and that kind of thing.
Come on, Marcos, you can do this.
I could for a month. I mean, but I am appointed by the board, but only in my capacity as being their staff. I cannot be appointed by them, by the ordinance, as a citizen. I would be happy to chair it or vice chair it, as the case may be, if my tenure wasn't coming up. Depending on the schedule, this may be the only meeting I attend, right?
So,
Yeah.
so Ellen, you have a huge breadth of knowledge, you know, and of parliamentary related issues. You do your homework on all those things. Would you be willing to serve in either one of those roles?
I am fairly much in love with Whiting Street Reservoir and with the best parts of Holyoke. And I will be willing to do anything I can to help.
I'll work with you, Sue Ellen, we can do this. Remember that recycling center we set up
Oh,
100
my
years ago?
Lord. Yes, I want you to know that Marlene is one of the original members of the high school committee that's put together the most amazing recycling program, which resulted in the blue boxes you all have today.
Wow.
Here, here. What a team.
Okay, that sounds great. And
Sue can share, I'll help her do anything.
so Sue Ellen, is that something you'd be willing to do then if?
I'll work with you.
I'll get it started and we'll see how it plays.
I'll work with you. I'll do it. I'll work with you. That'll be good.
Okay, I know Harry will. I know everybody will. This is really an amazing committee. And I don't know if our city councilor is still on, but I would like to thank him for getting this going.
I agree.
He's still on. He had Councilor Sullivan hasn't escaped yet.
Yeah, thanks all. And I'll be following the progress of this closely. It's near and dear to my heart. So,
As with all of us.
Thank you. So we should formalize this, though. We should. So Sue Ellen, I'll ask you, and then I do believe we should vote on this. So first of all, let me clarify between. So Marlene and Sue Ellen, you're willing to chair if elected.
Yes,
Okay, and
Yes,
Marlene, you'd be willing to be the vice chair.
Yes.
Okay, so I would. Do we have a motion?
I motion to nominate Sue Ellen Panich as chair of the Whiting Street Reservoir Committee and Marlene Connor as vice chair of the Whiting Street Reservoir Committee.
Do we have a second?
second.
Second.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And because it's a Zoom meeting, I suggest we go around. So I'll start that and say, aye. Kip,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Marcos,
Aye.
and okay, so moved. Now we can I suspect we should have Marlene and Sue Ellen vote as well. Sue Ellen
I'm going to abstain.
and Marlene.
My husband's gonna have my head. Sure, why not?
Yeah,
Come on,
on
Sue
a platter,
Ellen.
I'm sure.
There's no abstaining.
So my brief tenure, I think, is now over, and I
Yeah.
would just suggest that we try to set how much time we're going to spend on each meeting and how often we meet. And so I'll turn that over to you.
Well, I would like to start by going around the group and seeing how often we think we need to meet and what would be a most convenient time for everyone. I think every 2 weeks to start, because there's a lot to do just to get set up. And I think that's a minimum. And frankly, anything but 6 is a good time for me. Marcos?
I didn't hear your time, Sue. When do you want to have it?
Any day, any time, but not 6 o'clock.
Earlier.
Earlier or later. It depends on what everybody's doing. Some people have other constraints in their life. I'm retired, so my dinner hour is sacrosanct, but other than that, any time is fine.
I would point out that by city ordinance, city committees cannot meet prior to 5 o'clock unless it's an emergency that's approved by both the mayor and the council president. So that leaves either 5 o'clock or 7.
Okay,
I'm fine with either of those. I have a slight preference for 5 because 7 o'clock is bathing time around here for the kids. That's my chore. If we're gonna meet, I would love to be able to meet one of the first 2 weeks of January. For obvious reasons, I wouldn't be able to make any of the others.
I would like 5 o'clock. That works real good for me.
My
5
bedtime
o'clock is fine.
8:15, so as long as it's away from 8:15, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm also fine with 5 or 7.
well, it's sounding like 5 o'clock is preferred. Is that all right with everyone?
It's okay with me. Yeah.
Okay with me?
Okay with me.
Okay,
Could I suggest Thursday, January 7th at 5 o'clock?
do we want to continue meeting on Thursday? I think, if I am not mistaken, Thursday is the Conservation Commission meeting.
Correct.
It is. It will certainly knock me out of some meetings.
Tuesday the 5th?
Tuesday's good. The DPW is always on Monday, so I'll be okay.
It's prior to city council.
I'm just trying to get to January. Okay, how about if we go for Tuesday, the 5th of January at 5 o'clock?
Very good.
Sounds good.
And let me remind everybody that you've got to also follow the open meeting laws. You've got to get it advertised 48 hours prior.
5
So-
p.m.
Jeff, can we ask you to take care of that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
and then if we're going to follow that along within every 2 weeks, we're looking at Tuesday, the 19th for the following meeting.
Okay,
And Jeff, for that meeting on the 5th, the cutoff for open meeting law would be Wednesday, the 30th, because Friday, the 1st is a day off and Thursday, the 31st, City Hall is closed half the day.
Well, I mean, if I know today that they're being planned, then I'll just schedule them today and get it out of the way.
good.
Okay, and then just to see that we have 2 months set up ahead. I'm looking at February 2nd and the 16th. And then we're scheduled for 2 months out, and we can look at that again, perhaps at our second meeting.
Sounds great.
Fine.
What will our itinerary be in 2 weeks? What do we need to think about before?
Well, I think the first thing we ought to do is look at the present situation that the reservoir is in, what its water use is and isn't. I think we should consider what needs to be done with the reservoir to bring it up to public use, and then set up a list of things we need to consider for the future. I'd like to start at the beginning.
Right, and the, Mike mentioned that there was some work with respect to the condition of the reservoir, so whatever baseline information that there is from the water department, is there a way to get access to any of that?
Oh, I think if one of us called Dave Conti, we could get it. Do I have a volunteer?
I work well with Dave Conti.
Okay,
And there, you know, there was I know there has been work to, there was a permit request in front of the Conservation Commission. So I know there was work done on the design for the spillway. And so
Spillway,
there was also an inspection of the dam. And although I heard Councilor Sullivan indicate there was problems with, the earthen dam may be considered dangerous. That's not exactly how it was described by the engineer there, but I don't know. So it is worth understanding what, what that engineer thought, and then, do we need an additional assessment of some kind? But I do think the engineer did an assessment when they were redesigning the spillway. Mike, Councilor Sullivan, are you aware? I think they're.
Yeah, I haven't had an update on that in probably about a year. I know it looks like they've begun to start work on it, or getting ready to start work on it. And it'll be good if we get somebody from the water, if you get somebody, the member who's going to be representing, because they would have all of this information at their fingertips. I don't mean to alarm anybody, but the study of, and I'm just throwing numbers out of, 500 dams in the Northeast, that's in the top 3% of the potentially most hazardous. But that's something they could give you the exact specific details on.
Was the engineer Tyan Bond?
Like I said, I don't know. This was from a conversation about a year ago, but basically, if it ever failed, it'd take out 91 and Route 5. So.
Oh, we found our
And maybe
source of money now.
And the north-south, the Amtrak would go too. So.
We found our source of money, MassDOT.
Yeah, there we go.
let me then ask two people to do things. Jeff, would you see if you can get whatever the Conservation Commission did about that, their view and report on
Yep.
what the application was? And Dave, if you would come up with whatever the water department is considering now and what has been mandated. I believe there was a state mandate, but I
Right.
can't swear to that.
Okay,
The water department may also have some sort of valuation,
yeah,
financial valuation on the reservoir itself. And we might want to know what that is.
okay.
Yeah, I think they were the actual applicant, so I'm pretty sure they would have everything. Yeah.
Would
Great.
we want to make a priority to have the water department representative and or Dave Conti itself, so like someone from staff to come here and speak to the commission about those things in detail,
That'd
like
be
in
great.
case we had questions.
I think that would be good.
Is it all right if I invite him when I talk to him?
Yes.
Please do.
I shall.
Yes, yes.
I think it's more than invite. They're supposed to have a representative on this committee.
Yeah, by ordinance they are.
Right.
Okay, well, I'll start with that.
And if they're not ready to provide a representative, then at a minimum, we would like Dave Conti, we expect Dave Conti to be here to speak with us about this.
I hear you.
I think there is a potential for something like, and Harry, you know better than I do, but 840 million gallons per day of available water when the reservoir is up and running. So this is a very, very important
Right,
resource.
I do know that that is the fastest recharging reservoir we have. Even, it's probably the smallest, but it's the fastest recharging. So, I mean, that in itself is something that's pretty spectacular, having it right in pretty much all of our backyards.
Yeah, it's a major resource.
Yes, and getting back to the earthen dam there, in 2019, in the summertime, riding my bike around there, a couple different days, they were surveying. There was a surveyors group there, so I know it was surveyed. And I also know that the water department likes to keep the water low, so it's never up to the top, except maybe in the winter and the spring, because of the problems that may exist.
Right. Well, you know, we have one more housekeeping concern that just occurred to me, and that's a secretary. How are we going to manage to keep minutes of these meetings? Jeff?
So I was going to ask Jeff. So Jeff, was the council going to loan you to us, or was that not part of the deal?
I don't know that that's the plan. I will say, yeah.
That's not part of the deal. That's asking too much of Jeff unless he wants to volunteer as a civilian, you know, but
I mean, I will say with the meetings being on Tuesday, you know, and then going right into either ordinance or city council meeting right after this one would, you know, be a bit of a long day tapping out minutes.
Yeah.
Is there a volunteer? Okay, let me put it another way. Who wants to be the victim? We could take turns with this for a while and see how that works out.
Okay, we could do that.
That sounds fair. And
It does sound fair. And
I will volunteer for the first to take minutes at what I'm assuming is our next meeting, not this one.
Well, I've got some notes from this meeting. I think Jeff Anderson Burgos also has some notes.
yes, Jeff said he was taking notes. So
as you know, as long as I'm not the permanent secretary, I'm happy to take round one of the rotating volunteer schedule.
Thank you, sir. That's
Yep.
wonderful. Okay.
might we set up a Google Doc or something like that so we could just continue the minutes from 1 week to the next? In other words, we just have a continuous flow. Might be a way to, something to consider.
I think it's a terrific idea and I have no idea how to do it.
Mhm.
I'm with Sue on that.
My
Me too.
granddaughter left, so I know nothing.
Me too.
You know, I can speak on that. So I could create, you know, being that this is a committee that was created by the city council, I could create a Google Doc folder specific for this committee and just make sure all of you have open access to it. And then you'd be able to, you know, add anything to it.
That has worked very well for our Conservation Commission since we've just started using that approach. And so we can have either a folder for each individual set of minutes, or I will say at work, we just, you know, have the minutes template and we just continue for the next date, and you can just continue to move on in the same, you just go back to the same document, you know where to go, and it's quite helpful.
Great.
And that would facilitate, Kip, us having volunteers just go and grab the next date, take the take the agenda template and, go from there. So Jeff, if you could set that up for us, that would be
Sure.
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that suits the chair.
I think that's sensational. Okay, so we are set up with meetings for 2 months. We have a chair, co-chair, a first meeting secretary. At that first meeting, I think we'll get the secretary set up probably by appointment for the next 3 meetings. Jeff will set up a Google Docs folder with an email to all of us, letting us know that it's set up and how to reach him if we have questions. We have a number of things to look into for the first meeting. I've got some notes here. And is there anything that anybody wants to add to that summary?
There's going to be another need for you. So is it your intent that I create these Zoom meetings for you, or does one of you have a Zoom account of your own?
I have a Zoom account and I can do it.
Okay.
If everybody would send me, it's sue.ellen.hanich@comcast.net.
Well, and I would ask, is it a paid account that allows for participation from the
Yes,
public?
I have a.
Okay.
It's not a, get in there and get out in 45 minutes. It's a formal business account.
Because if like 100 people want to join, just make sure that people can come in.
They can.
Okay.
I can't do it without Mimi here, I will admit. She's crucial. But as long as one of you doesn't steal her from me for the evening, I'm okay.
So I just have a quick question. I know this is being recorded. The little red light is flashing up in the upper left-hand corner, but this is not being recorded by Holyoke Media, correct? Does
I
anybody?
don't know.
No,
certainly don't.
I actually set the recording because as the meeting was coming up, I actually thought, well, I don't know if this meeting has to be recorded for open meeting purposes. And so I recorded it just to make sure that there was a recording of it. But just because I'm just acquainting myself with the job, I didn't know if there was a difference between this kind of committee or city council per se.
I think probably we're going to have open meetings, but this one as an organizational meeting doesn't really count.
So I'll just ask, I mean, does anybody on the committee think there's value to involving Holyoke Media so that these meeting minute videos are available for the public to review on the Holyoke Media YouTube channel, which, we do that with the CPA. And I think it's really valuable. It's valuable for me as a member of the committee to be able to go back and have access to review and, what exactly was the motion that was made that we voted on. So I have no idea what the process is to get Holyoke Media involved in that. If we do think it's a good idea, I don't know how you get it done, but we can figure it out.
I would agree with that. Just contacting Johan, and just as long as he has a heads up, and he doesn't even have to do it live. He could probably grab the recording and transfer it.
Yeah, if I may, not only you really want to do that. I went through hell with the school building committee, with everybody accusing us of doing things in secret behind people's backs, in backroom deals and all this. You really something like this. Even already tonight, I've received 2 text messages on my cell phone wanting to know why it wasn't on TV. And I'm looking at the city calendar, and even though we were on the city calendar, it doesn't give the Zoom meeting ID or anything there on the city calendar. So just a cautionary thing. You really want to have them recorded, have them available so people can watch them. Have it controlled so that people can watch it on Zoom or, Jeff, maybe you can tell us what it takes to have it even on the TV. I know some of them, they overlap and they can't do both, but at least available so people can review them,
Well, I know from working with, so Scott with Holyoke Media is who we work with to get the council meetings up. And so when we have council or, ordinance, the subcommittee meetings, I send him the link in the morning of the meeting. So he's got that and make sure that it's broadcasting. I know it with other department meetings, they're not always on channel 15 live, but are made available on the website, and the recordings are shared later on. So from what I understand, like a meeting like this doesn't have to be live in the same way that city council meetings do, but they do have to be made available.
I
Right,
think,
so that's, I said, let's make sure it's available one way or the other. So you don't,
I would tend to agree with Mike, because if there is anything in the city that is going to bring out all kinds of really serious emotion, it's going to be that reservoir. I think even more so than the school. And we don't dare have anything going on that isn't totally transparent.
Agreed.
So if someone will get me the name of the person who manages this, I'll be glad to contact them.
Sure, I'll send you Scott's information, and he'll be able to work with you on that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Okay, is there anything anybody wants to add to this information? Anything you want on the agenda for the next meeting?
My question to you is, we're gonna use your Zoom, you're gonna give us a link prior to the meeting?
I sure will.
Okay,
That's
That's all
why
I
I have asked that everybody email me their email addresses so I can get that out directly.
okay.
You of course will also have it, Sue Ellen, based on the email that Jeff sent out to all of us. We were all on
Okay,
that.
right. Okay,
That's true, but I think,
Okay, we're glad to send it.
I don't know
Got
how I'm
send
going
it.
to do that. It's
it.
We'll
let me
send it.
just set it up by myself once.
Yep.
Actually, Jeff could probably send me everybody's emails, but the way I get them, there's no email attached. And I want to set up the beginning of this so I can go back to it as a group.
So be it.
Sounds great. We'll respond directly.
Yep.
Great. And I will be extremely careful to have 3 other people read the numbers to me. I've been known to be a little dyslexic. Okay, if there is nothing to add to this meeting, no one has anything else to say, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this first organizational meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Any further discussion?
No, it's just nice to see everyone.
Yes,
To
good
see
luck.
you.
Nice
Let's see
holidays,
what we can do.
everybody.
Good night.
thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
all.
Good night.
Thanks. Night.
Stay healthy.